You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 62, Deep Purple and Black Sabbath. And coming to you from the civilly unrested suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from Providence, Rhode Island, your co-host, John Annenhope Matola.
Getting right into it. And we've got a special guest for you this week. None other than Joe Siegler of the wonderful black-sabbath.com, the ultimate Black Sabbath fan site. Joe, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you. How do they say? Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you so much for stopping by. That's great.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
So tell us a little bit about your, so we talked a little bit back and forth over the past couple of weeks about just kind of the many ways where Deep Purple and Black Sabbath are intertwined, and wanted to kind of get your take on it, and tell us a little bit about your site and what your background is with Black Sabbath.
Well, I started with Sabbath in '81 when Mob Rules was their new album, and I was leafing through. You guys might be old enough to remember Hit Parader and Cream.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You're giving us too much credit on our young looks here.
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm older than you, but anyway. I was leafing through there one day and I saw the cover art for the Mob Rules album, and I didn't own any Sabbath ever. In fact, I hardly owned any rock at that point. And I was looking at this cover art and I'm going, what the hell kind of music goes with this? So I went down to the record store and bought it blind. I had no idea what it was. And then that album starts with the track, Turn Up the Night, and that guitar riff, I'm like, okay, that's not like anything I've ever listened to before. And I was kind of hooked. And shortly after that, like within the week, I also went back and bought another Sabbath album blind. I bought Paranoid. That was the second album I bought, and that was random. And at that point, I didn't know they had another singer besides Dio. So I'm like, who the hell is this? This isn't Ronnie James Dio. So, and within a week, I bought everything else and I was hooked. So, wow. And I mean, this was '81, so there wasn't the internet. You know, you couldn't just Google for everything, and you have to go to the actual bloody library to look stuff up. And so I basically got hooked into it from that original guitar riff, and from there I expanded into, well, what else is like this? You know, like, well, there's not a whole lot like that. But then I discovered Purple. The problem is I can't remember where I came online with Purple. I know the first concert I saw, we talk about that later, but I can't remember my on-ramp with Purple. I just can't. So the only thing I know for sure is the first Purple album I bought was a compilation, which you guys probably would know the year better than me, Deepest Purple.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah, that was my first compilation, actually, or my first Purple album, too.
And that would have been...
That was my first Purple album, and after that, I guess the next thing after that would probably be something else we'll probably talk about later, which is Perfect Strangers. But I think that was my first proper album.
And I think a Deepest Purple would have had to been very early '80s when they were like, well, we still own all this stuff and we got to milk it for all it's worth because we don't know if this band will ever get back together. So let's put out some compilations. Right.
Well, we do have to fight the fake Deep Purple too.
Yeah, so. that is true. It wasn't much of
a story. I love that story. But anyway, I mean, you'll discover talking to me, I go all over the place. So.
Oh, we're no strangers to that.
We love it.
That's great. So yeah, your site is, I mean, it's huge. Like I remember, checking out your site over the years and not really even following you on Instagram or on Twitter rather, not even really making the connection that it was like, oh, that it's the same, that site and the account are by the same person. But yeah, it's just such a great resource. And it's one of those great fan sites that if you're looking for information on Black Sabbath, you're not going to go to the official Black Sabbath site. You're going to go to your site because it's where all the real nitty gritty and information is. It's not just a
Yeah.
marketing.
The official site is about the 70s era and 13 and that stuff, and that's it. I mean, all the other stuff, Dio, Ian Gillan, Tony Martin, and all the rest, to quote Gilligan's Island, they will never be on there because that's all run by Sharon's office. So,
Yep.
eh.
It never happened.
Well, I mean, back in the wilderness days, I don't recall. I don't know if you guys know, but I've spent 17 years working for a video game company. And while I was there, in the beginning, when I started, I did what is now called community manager. But back then, in the early mid 90s, that didn't exist. They pioneered that thing, and it wasn't called community manager. And I don't claim I invented anything, but I was one of the first to represent a company like that. The company name was Apogee Software or 3D Realms. The most popular game we ever put out was Duke Nukem 3D.
Oh yeah. Oh.
So I worked on that. While we were doing that, things started coming out with online presences. The first two bands I ever remember with any kind of online presence were Megadeth and Deep Purple. Megadeth's Euthanasia album had an online link. It was only FTP back then. It wasn't much. You could download a picture or two. It wasn't anything like what it was now, but they were one of the first. And Deep Purple operated under deep-purple.com, which I believe they were calling themselves Rose's Cantina back then.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
But when I initially started the Sabbath site, it was its first true incarnation was just a page off of my company's site, because owning your own server and your own domains, this just didn't happen back then. This was in 94 when we started looking into it. And my site came online in July 95. And it wasn't until a little past that 96 when I wanted my own domain, because I got tired of being a subdirectory off something else. And so I went around looking for a domain name, and Black Sabbath without the hyphen was already taken by some other fan. This was the Wild West. I mean, anybody could have anything. And I looked around and go, well, all right, that's already taken. And not by any official presence. It was just another fan who was doing squat with it. And back then I looked around and there was nothing. So that's why I started the site, because I looked at every single Black Sabbath presence. There was no official anything. So it wasn't anything like that. And I thought, I can do better than every single damn one of them. And so I started my own. When I wanted a domain name, I looked around. Since Black Sabbath was already taken, I thought, well, Purple's operating with a hyphen. I'll do that. So that's why Black-Sabbath exists, because of Deep Purple's presence in 1995 or 96. But that's why my site has a hyphen in it. And it's just grown over time. In fact, it started when I first got online in 87. I was on CompuServe in a music forum, and I would keep track of the lineup changes in Sabbath, especially in the mid 80s. It was a nightmare to keep track of. And it got worse over time. It's I find out that this was wrong and this person was added, and it just grew and grew and grew. And I just added this and added that and started picking up from over here and got a following, and it just kind of snowballed. In fact, my site itself, I realized this earlier this year, my site turns 25 in mid-July this year. I think the exact date is July 12th. I'd have to look it up to be sure. But
wow,
25 years I've been doing that site. It's holy crap.
You'll be old enough to rent a car.
Oh. So the site is kind of is it right now a compilation of all the information that you gathered starting 25 years ago leading up to now? Is that why it's so comprehensive, or did you ever do an overhaul at some point?
Well, I gave it a fresh coat of paint about 8 or 9 years ago, and that was a nightmare because I don't know what you know about web design, but the earliest incarnations were done in Microsoft Front Page, and the HTML that software generates is an absolute
Awful.
spaghetti mess.
Absolutely awful.
In fact, some of that code still survives to this day. It's been in WordPress for quite a while now, but some of the old code, when I just like wanted to pick up sections and copy them, I just picked up the code. I don't care what the code looks like. I just care that it works. So there's still some old garbage spaghetti front page code in there, but yeah, it just grew and became everything. And what I cared about, I guess one of the driving forces for the site all this time has been, I care about the whole story and getting it correct.
Yes. And it really shows on your site, because your
absolutely.
your timeline section is just outstanding. It's the best resource that I can think of for just showing the complete history of Black Sabbath.
Well, it was difficult in places. The Eternal Idol album in '87 was particularly difficult to get in the right order. About 5 years ago, when I did a 20th anniversary piece, I got some input from Bob Daisley, and he's not with us anymore. Jeff Nichols helped with that, and I guess some of the guy, Eric Singer, helped with that a little too. Because that's one way to get to Eric Singer. You go, so Eric, why is there another drummer credited on Eternal Idol?
Oh boy.
Yes.
But yeah, I've gotten help from Bev Bevan too, because Bev used to keep diaries of stuff like that. And then I found out in '87, before they did the Sun City shows, there was a show in Greece, and then there was supposed to be another show somewhere else. Right now I don't remember where it is, and I did not know that they had brought Geezer Butler back for one show in 1987. And he came back, he was going to play the show, and they got to the show, and it was so like backyard kind of equipment. It was so small time, and nobody showed up, that they're just like this, and they didn't go. And then when that didn't happen, Geezer just left again. And I didn't even know that happened until a couple of years ago.
Well, yeah, like I said, with your Black Sabbath does not have a very neat and organized history. It's like so chaotic, and people in and out, and multiple people on the same albums and tours, and people redoing things. It's
especially once you get to the 80s, right?
That's happened twice, when they recorded an album and the singer left, and they got somebody else to re-record it. There's one for you. Here's your Sabbath trivia question. What are they? What are those two albums that happened on?
All right, so my guess is I know what happened with the Eternal Idol, right? Because the original vocals were Ray Gillen,
right?
And then it was Tony Martin. And was the other one Never Say Die with Dave Walker?
No, that's not, because that might be it. That's a good guess, but no, because we don't really know how far they got with that with Dave Walker. No, the one I'm thinking of is Dehumanizer.
Really?
Oh.
Dehumanizer was recorded with Dio, and he quit when they were making it. And they got Tony Martin in to re-record the vocals again. And then Dio came back, so they jettisoned the Tony Martin version.
So there's a Tony Martin version out there somewhere.
Correct.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Well, out there is not correct, because it's not released anywhere to my knowledge. But it's on my list of Sabbath goals to hear. That, the 2001 studio sessions with Mach 1, which got thrown out. We heard one song from that in 2001, Scary Dreams. I want to hear that. The Tony Martin version of Dehumanizer. We did hear the Ray Gillen version of Eternal Idol, which I was surprised that I only released. The Heaven and Hell demos with Ozzy. What's the other one? There's another one I'm forgetting. And the Never Say Die stuff with Dave Walker. The demos, the 84 demos with Dave Donato, and the 84 demos with Ron Keel. It's like, I want to hear all that crap. And it's like, gah.
Yeah. It's frustrating when you know there's this stuff out there that you're probably never going to hear.
Especially because you said about a half a dozen of them that I just heard of now.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
That's my
Wow.
list of. I mean, well, Purple has that too. I want to hear "Battle Rages On" with Joe Lynn Turner.
Yeah, right. You've got that, and then you've got it. Yeah, Battle Rages On with Gillen Turner, and then you've also got kind of what's the other one? Well, we talked about a little bit about the Rainbow with Graham Bonnet, starting off with Difficult to Cure and then kind of fizzling out.
Yeah,
I don't think there's
right.
anything that exists, but as far as recordings.
Well, that's. I mean, if you want to cross over into other bands, there's like Back in Black demos with Bon Scott.
Oh, yeah.
The second Van Halen album with Gary Cherone.
Yeah, you could put together a really good White Whale list of.
Yeah, the second Dio album with what's his face? Rowan Robertson.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There were 2 unreleased tracks from Lock Up the Wolves, and then some work had been done towards another album, but I'm not exactly sure how much. But I know Rowan's online. If he hears this, he'll probably say something.
Good.
Yeah, we want to know.
Yeah, exactly. Tell us, Rowan, please. So there's obviously a ton of interweaving and back and forth with Black Sabbath, but I mean, you brought up in our earlier conversations, one of the before we even get into the members of the band, one of the cornerstones of both bands for a time anyway is Martin Birch.
Oh yeah,
the man, the Wasp. Or I mean, I guess, well, did he ever do any Black Sabbath albums as the Wasp? That's the question. What were his nicknames during the Black Sabbath albums?
oh God, I'd have to go get the liner notes and look.
Yeah, should have done.
Did he use that name with Iron Maiden too? So
yeah, I think he did it with Iron Maiden. We know we have lots of theories about which names he brings out at different times. It's like kind of like when he's bringing his A game, he's the Wasp. When he, we've got all he's been the Gardener, right? Was it the Gardener?
Yeah, the Gardener was, I think, your favorite.
Yeah,
my favorite was Disappearing Armchair. So
yes.
No, I believe. And actually, I was just listening to the Martin Popoff podcast the other day where he did a whole episode on Martin Birch.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And he retired, I think, and he said in '92 he did his last album was an Iron Maiden album, and then he retired.
That would be Fear of the Dark. If it's '92, that would be Fear of the Dark.
I can't remember if it was that, but he did end on Iron Maiden, and then he retired, and is still. I mean, he's alive. He's just not active. Doing anything.
Well, yeah, it's like there's other guys like that. It's like John Deacon. It's like, come on, man, do something. Or
just burned out, I guess. But
so I don't know. I mean, Billy Joel's like that. It's like, he's like after '93, he's like, nope, I'm not doing it anymore, and he hasn't done anything. Well, I mean, he plays live, but he doesn't record anything since '93. And as a Billy Joel fan, that's frustrating as hell.
Yeah, at a certain point, you don't have to. You're just like, I've got enough material out there. People just complain.
Some fans want new music,
Well, these days you only make about $1.50 anyway. So
yeah, the motivation isn't. It wouldn't be money. It would just be pleasing the fans, which we would like, but they don't always want to do it.
Yeah, when you're Billy Joel, you got Billy Joel money. You just do whatever the hell you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some Martin Birch highlights for you in the Black Sabbath camp?
Oh, I don't know if I can give you a specific like that. It's like I just look at his work with Sabbath as just really good shit. I don't know if I can pull out a specific thing. That's not going to be a great conversation point for the podcast, but
yeah.
But
well, so he obviously did, and refresh my memory, he did the first 2 Dio albums, right? Yeah,
Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. I don't think he did anything else besides that.
No, for Sabbath, I don't think so.
No, I think that was it for Sabbath.
But I mean, and just like those 2 albums right there, like within a year of each other, and really couldn't sound any more different. He got 2 really different but great sounds on those albums.
Well, the other thing is, if you go backwards and go into Never Say Die to Heaven and Hell is such a titanic shift.
Oh, yeah. It's like a different band.
I mean, yes, it's a different band. I mean,
or it was like a different band.
Well, it's got Bill and it's got Geezer and it's got Tony on it. So that's more than sufficient for authenticity.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so different, and I know the vibe is different because Dio was there, so Geezer's not gonna write any of the lyrics. But it's like the birth process for that album is bizarre because Geezer quit, was replaced by first Jeff Nichols and Dio himself at the demo level. Jeff Nichols, and then what's his face from Rainbow, whose name's eluding me right now. Craig Gruber.
Oh yeah.
Craig Gruber was in there for a while. Then Geezer came back, and you had Birch, which was different style than what they were doing. It's like, yeah, it's so different. It's God, it's so different. And then, as you pointed out, Mob Rules is its own way different from Heaven and Hell. Heaven and Hell was more, how do I put that? It's certainly not a quiet album by any means, but it's not, it doesn't have that raw sound that Mob Rules has. Mob Rules has a much raw sound, more raw sound than Heaven and Hell did. Heaven and Hell was slick, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's a masterpiece of an album, but it doesn't have that gritty sound that Mob Rules has.
Yeah,
so
I would
interesting.
say,
you coming in as Dio being your first entry point into Sabbath. I think John and I both were kind of figured out or were first introduced to the Ozzy era. So do you have like a more of a fondness for the Dio era because of that, or?
Well, they always say you never forget your first. And as my website shows, I have no particular, I don't favor one over another.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, if you put a gun to my head and make me pick something, I'm picking Tony Martin. But
that's interesting.
Which is a unpopular choice, to say the least.
Well, yeah, but he's a good singer, though. I mean, there's nothing wrong with him. He just wasn't in the probably the most popular, or accepted version of the band.
I know, and he got screwed over by them too. It's like, but we could do a whole 3-episode series on Tony Martin. But yeah, it's like, do I have a fondness for Dio? Yeah, I look back at that and I go, that was my on-ramp. I tend to remember the on-ramp. It's like certain bands. What was the first thing? Like Rush. My first Rush album was Signals. And it's like most Rush fans will go, oh, I like all the 70s stuff, 2112 and, stuff from back then. And then me, like the 80s stuff, which the 70s guys tend to hate. It's like, no, that was where I started. I liked that and Grace Under Pressure, and even not Trial by Fire. That's a Journey album. The red one, the red cover with the 3 dots that Rush put out in late '87. Can't think of the title right now, but
I was gonna say not the one with the red clock.
Trial by Fire? No, not Trial by. Yeah, that's the Journey album again. That was a bad Journey reunion album. That one. But yeah,
I'm sorry. My Rush knowledge is not enough to.
Yeah,
to
me
help
neither. But I guess the point being is that it sounds like you kind of like some of the lesser popular versions of some of your favorite bands.
Well, yeah, it's like I look at somebody like, oh, let's go off script, like Pat Benatar. I love Pat Benatar, but most people think when they think of Pat Benatar, they think of Hit Me With Your Best Shot, Heartbreaker and the early stuff.
Right.
I like her latter stuff. It's like her last album that she put out was 2003. It was an album called Go. It's a masterpiece. It's a fabulous rock album, but nobody's heard it because it sold like 2 copies and it's out of print. And it's like, that's a freaking shame. And I love that more than anything else that she's known for. So, and like U2, like, my wife loves the early U2 stuff. Like I Will Follow and, things from the first couple albums like Boy and whatnot. Can't stand that crap. Joshua Tree and Forward. It's like, I like, but the really early stuff that's really popular, don't like it. Sabbath, I can't say that. I like the early Sabbath stuff too. And if you want to apply that to Purple, because it's supposed to be a Purple podcast, it's like Mach 1 of Purple. And it's like, that's so diametrically different to where they went. I mean, you would talk titanic shift, that would be in rock. It's like it's just an absolute titanic shift in tone
Yeah.
from what came before. And I'm not counting the John Lord thing, the live album before that. I'm talking studio album. But yeah, it's like I like that original Purple era. Not as much as the others, but and the question you actually asked me is about Dio. So you see what I mean about going all over the place?
Yeah, but it kind of ties together because we're talking about different versions of the same band. So like what I was wondering is what, like, a gun to your head, what makes you think Tony Martin over, say, Ozzy, Dio, some of the other popular singers of Sabbath? Why would you favor him?
Because people tend to not like that stuff, and I like doing the complete version. So I'm like, screw you. I will always talk about Tony Martin as long as I'm around. I want the whole thing. Well, having said that, there is nothing from any era that I dislike, except maybe the Technical Ecstasy album. I'm not a big fan of that album, but I like all the Sabbath stuff and like all the Purple stuff. It's like, except for maybe one single song that Purple did, which is like god awful. It is Hey, here's a question: what is your least favorite Deep Purple song?
John?
Place in Line. You don't even have to ask me twice.
Only one.
Yep.
You only get to pick one.
Yeah, John.
That one.
John. I think you have to say it again.
What? Place in Line. From Who Do We Think We Are?
No, I can top that.
Uh-oh. What is it?
No. What about you, Nathan?
Oh my God, my least favorite Deep Purple song. It's
you don't talk about yours as much.
Unpopular, but I think it's very unpopular. Actually, I think it's probably The Mule.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
No, I can still top that.
What's that?
Okay.
The single worst Deep Purple song to bear the name is gotta be Breakfast in Bed.
Oh, but still not as bad as the Van Halen Breakfast in Bed.
Well, that was off of that 2-disc compilation.
Yeah.
That wasn't that good either, but
yeah, Breakfast in Bed I can see.
It's awful.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think
the three of us singing Candace Knight's bits from Blackmore Night album would be better than that.
Yeah, we'll do that as a special bonus episode.
But everybody has their own least favorites, I guess you could say.
Oh, yeah. I know. I mean, I'm sure that there's some, darkest timeline where somebody says, well, the worst Black Sabbath song is Into the Void. It's like somebody has to. That's a thing. Yeah. I've learned that. I hate when people do rankings. They ask me to say, what is your favorite? And I'll tell them whatever. And they go, well, what about blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's not the question you asked me. You didn't ask me what your favorite was. You asked me what my favorite was. And it's like you rank albums. There's this one dude I watch on YouTube that does album rankings all the time. I can't think of what his name is right now, but
is it Sea of Tranquility?
Yeah.
He does a lot of that, yeah.
And he usually spends like 2 or 3 minutes every episode going, this is my list. You don't like it.
Yes. He starts them up. And it's really, I love his videos. They're really interesting. But yeah, he's just like bracing because there's going to be people just commenting to tell you why your opinion is wrong. No, how could you put this album above that album? It's like, listen.
Yeah, but I mean, it's all. I mean, those kind of list things, they're fun, but they're all really subjective. I mean, there's no right or wrong. I mean, I am a huge Kiss fan, and there's nobody more opinionated on the earth than Kiss fans. And I went to it. It wasn't last December; it was the December before, an expo in New Jersey, and Eddie Trunk had just done his like top 25 Kiss songs list or whatever. So we're all going, what's your top 25? What's your top 25? We're like, what's your top 5 albums? So I told him mine. And, the first like 3 or 4 were from the 70s. And then my last one was Revenge from 1992. And I like a ton of people, Revenge. Oh my God. Oh, they all flipped out and everything. I'm like, yeah, but that was my first album. That's why it holds a special place. So you don't have to like it.
Is an amazing album.
Absolutely.
It's an amazing album. And if they had That's why I think Kiss went into the toilet when they put the makeup back on, because you had Revenge, you had
Carnival of Souls.
I knew it was Souls. I couldn't think of the first word. That's something of Souls. Anyway, I was going to say River of Souls. That's a Babylon 5 episode. But anyway, Carnival of Souls. Yeah, you had Revenge and Carnival of Souls, which are an obvious path. It's like, this is what we're doing, and I'm like, this is great. And then they go and do the reunion album where only one song is them anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like what was it? Anton Fig, and I forget who else was really on that album, but yeah,
not
it
Ace
was like,
and
then they had 2 more albums after that, and I'm like, you talk about people that get screwed. What's his face from the '80s in Kiss? The primary non-makeup guitarist,
Bruce.
Kulick.
Yeah,
His brother just died the other day, but yeah, Kulick got screwed because it's like, once they did the reunion, they should have brought him back. No, they brought the guitar tech into play. So
right. And I mean, everybody has their opinions about that, and I've kind of mellowed out over the past few years from what I was like in the time. Like I agree with you. Like when they started Revenge, Carnival of Souls, I was like all about the road they were going down, and then they did the reunion, and I was actually disappointed. And as a Kiss fan, people are just like, what are you, nuts? They're putting the makeup back on, you should be all excited. And I was not excited, because I loved that version of the band, because that was my version of the band.
Yep.
And
I got into Kiss when Lick It Up came out. So
wow.
Yep.
Well, and yeah, it's taking it back, like getting Kiss back together. Just throwing all those guys in their suits and the makeup doesn't take you back to what you're nostalgic for. It's kind of almost forcing it. It's like everyone always is asking Ian Gillan, every interview, the poor guy, oh, would you ever consider playing with Ritchie again? They just badger him about this. And it's, if you just kicked Steve Morse out and threw Ritchie in there, it wouldn't create a Machine Head 2, you know. It would.
You know what I think of whenever somebody asks him that? I think Mr. Grover, Mr. Gillian. You make $1 million when Frank Zappa caught on fire. And now that song goes. It's MTV lyrics, but
what is it? I don't know that one.
Oh,
this guy.
Oh yeah. Well, there's, and we read from an article recently that was like something like, they called him, what did they call him?
That's it. Mr. Grover and Mr. Gillian, you must have made $1 million the night that Frank Zappa caught on fire. That's the third
right.
song to use. Oh God, no, never mind. I was gonna try and show you my purple knowledge and realize halfway through I was gonna screw it up. So I will withdraw my comment.
Our knowledge isn't that great on Deep Purple.
The trivia question. Question.
Oh, you got a Deep Purple trivia question. What is it?
What do Pink Floyd and Deep Purple have in common?
They both have colors in the name.
No, not that. A little more complicated than that.
That's good though, Nate.
Well, you've got Gilmore and Ian Paice both played with Paul McCartney.
Good guess, but not what I'm looking for.
Mine would be a lot worse. I'm not even going to.
Let me give you a hint. It's lineup related.
Okay.
Lineup related. They're both. They both don't have their original singer as in the band.
You're in the ballpark, but that's not correct.
I don't know. What do you? I don't know.
Deep Purple and Pink Floyd, their drummer is the only band member to be there from day one, never quit, never been fired, never left.
Great point. Yeah.
The only member is the only member in those bands there from inception to now.
Yeah.
Even though Floyd now is technically only a legality, but still.
Right.
That's my Deep Purple trivia question.
I like that one. That's very true. I wonder how many other bands out there is the drummer the linchpin for. The only other one that's jumping to my mind, just because we've talked about it recently, was James Gang. Jim Fox.
Oh no, I can think of one where the drummer's been there from inception to now, but he's not the only one. You want to expand it? Weird Al Yankovic.
Oh, there you go, Joe Bermuda Schwartz.
John Bermuda Schwartz.
John Bermuda. I'm sorry.
But so is his entire band. His entire band has never changed since '83. The
That's a
only
great
change was
band.
when they added a keyboardist about after, I think it was on the Polka Party album. They added an official keyboardist, but other than that's the only change they ever made, and it's like that still impresses me. You've been there almost 40 years with the same guys, never changing. Even U2, which is regarded as being consistent, are not technically the original lineup. So,
Well, you know, our first like 6 or 7 episodes, we went every single episode. We had to bring up Quatermass for some reason. We ended up talking about Quatermass. Now, for like the last 5 or 6 episodes, I think Weird Al has come up in every single
I
episode.
was
For
gonna
some reason, we
say,
just
yeah.
keep coming back to Weird Al.
I think we might have to do a Weird Al bonus episode pretty soon.
Or we'll just change this into a Weird Al
I'll tell you,
podcast.
you know what I need to send you? Remind me later if you think of it. You know who's the biggest Weird Al fan, and it freaks me out that he's a Weird Al fan?
Who's that?
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Oh yeah, he does like I've seen him do like with Jimmy Fallon, right? He does,
Yeah,
like,
that video where they posted of them doing one of the polka things was a freaking riot.
yeah. And it's funny because when I saw that video, I'm kind of the same way. If I hear one of those songs, like my mind will instantly take me to that next song. If
Yep.
if I listen to the original song on the radio, great stuff. So now we've got members of Deep Purple and Black Sabbath, and I don't know if correct me if I'm wrong, but the first one I can kind of really pin down is Don Airey being involved in Never Say Die. I don't know if there were any earlier instances of a crossover than that.
No, I can't think of it. That's probably the first one, although he didn't show up in Purple until significantly later. But because before that, the only other, I mean, there was Jez Woodruff who played keyboards before him in Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't play with Purple. He played with Robert Plant a bit. But yeah, Don Airey would be the first. Now, Airey did the keyboards on the Never Say Die album, but did not play on the tour.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly can't remember who did keys on the Never Say Die tour, or even if there were keys on the Never Say Die tour. I've asked both Tony and Geezer, and neither of them remember.
Oh well.
Of course, '78 was a big drug era, so that doesn't surprise me. They don't remember that, and management is different, so I can't go back and say, look at the tour records, who played keyboards, you know. But yeah, Don Airey would be the first. I mean, he did not play any live shows. The next thing he did after that, I think, it wasn't Ozzy's solo band, because he didn't play live with Ozzy's solo band until the
that would have been
second tour.
Quite a few years later. I think he did. I think he did Cozy Powell's. Was it Cozy Powell Hammer, or would that have been earlier?
Hammer was earlier than that, well, that's one of those bands that's kind of floating around. You know, it's like is it Cozy Powell or Cozy Powell's Hammer? I mean, yes, you can look at the albums and determine, but when they're just playing together for BS reasons, I don't know. I guess it's a long-winded way of saying I don't know.
You know, it would have been Coliseum 2. He would have jumped into
Cozy's
Coliseum.
project, though, was it?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm sorry, but Don Airey would have went to Coliseum 2 after that, and then he played with Gary Moore for a bit before joining Rainbow.
That's right, he was in Rainbow. Wait, what did he play on in Rainbow?
Down to Earth, Difficult to Cure, and I think just those two. Yeah, he wasn't on.
Look it up. I'd have to look it up. I don't remember.
Yeah, he wasn't on Straight Between the Eyes. I do not believe.
That was that's another connection. Well, I mean, it's not really a Purple connection. Bobby Rondinelli.
Oh, there you go.
Not really a Purple connection, but kind of
we kind of consider anything tangential, any of the spin-off bands to be
Purple adjacent.
Yes. So there's
Bobby Rondinelli, who was on Straight to the Eyes, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, he would have been.
Then he played on Cross Purposes with Sabbath and on that tour, except for the last couple of gigs when he was out and they brought Bill Ward back. So
there would have been a lot of Rainbow connections. You would have had Dio, obviously. Yeah. Would have had Craig Gruber, who you mentioned already. Who else? Bob Daisley.
Mm-hmm.
Daisley, Rondinelli,
and Cozy.
There was also a rumor, hang on, what is it? I have to look it up. There was also, no, it didn't actually happen, but there was a, what's his face? I have to look at my timeline page because I know it's on there. There's another keyboardist that almost got the gig instead of Jeff Nichols. What's his name? Mike Stone.
David Stone?
David Stone.
Oh, is he?
David Stone. I found out in May 2013, Black Sabbath had made an offer to David Stone, then also late of Rainbow, to come along and play keyboards for Sabbath. He never accepted it, ending up with another project instead. I was like, that's one of those little tidbits you find reading this book and that book. I'm never foolish enough to think I know everything about Sabbath, because I don't. In fact, Iommi laughed at me to my face once about that. The 13 tour, I got the privilege of my life when I got a call, well, not a phone call, it was an email from Iommi's manager saying that Tony wanted to meet with me at his hotel before the Sabbath gig. Wow. And it was a one-on-one meeting.
Whoa.
It was him and me in a hotel room just talking shit for an hour. And wow. We were talking about the 13 album, and he was mentioning drummers. I said, well, obviously we all wanted Bill, and that didn't happen. And we talked about, I asked him, where did you find Brad Wilk? And we mentioned other drummers, because there was a rumor about, oh God, what's his face? Is the older, he just recently died. Drummer for Cream, I think it was.
Oh, Ginger Baker.
Ginger Baker. And he kind of laughed at me and said, yeah, Ginger Baker would not have worked. And and we mentioned some other drummers, and I right this minute, and this is not me bullshitting you, I honestly can't remember who it was he said. And he mentioned this drummer's name, fairly popular name. And I said, I didn't know you guys were considering him. And Tony looked at me, pointed and laughed and said, aha, you don't know everything.
He was setting you up.
Well, that's entire. They did that once before. The first time I ever met them collectively, that was the first time I met Dio. We were backstage, and I was talking to Tony and Geezer in Geezer's dressing room. And at this was 2007. So the next year would have been 2008, which would have been technically the 40-year anniversary of the creation of Black Sabbath, not their first album. And I said, are you doing something next year? And Tony goes to completely deadpan. He didn't even change a beat. He missed nothing. And he was totally setting me up. He goes, yeah, we haven't announced it yet, but next year we're going to do this thing with Ozzy and the tour and maybe an album or something. And I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And I said, really? You're doing that? And about a 10-second pause, and Tony and Geezer both pointing at me, laughing, going, look at his face. And at that moment, I thought, these dudes have accepted me, because
yes,
busted my chops. Like, but then I got Tony back, we were talking about websites, and I said, yeah, I do the fan site, and Tony asked me to my face, he goes, well, how come you don't do the official website? And in a moment of complete ballsiness, my immediate response without thinking about it was to tell Tony, because if you put out something that sucks, I want to be able to say that. And his response to that was equally brilliant. He goes, well, there's no worry there then. So,
wow.
Well, it's got to be true. It would be like difficult. It would be difficult to be the official person, because that's more of a marketing thing, and you're more of a fan archivist and someone who's documenting everything.
You mentioned it, and it's like you mentioned the timeline on my site earlier. I've done the game company stuff for 20 years. I do my own stuff. I've done other musician sites. I've done Bill Ward's and Cozy Powell and Geezer Butler, and I helped with Tony Iommi a bit, and I've done a lot of them. But my favorite page of anything I've ever done for any site is the timeline page. I love that, because it's just the complete story. And I take a lot of crap from people going, these guys were not in Sabbath. And I'm like, there's a big distinction between in Sabbath, because what's his face, the drummer on the 13 tour, Ozzy's drummer, whose name's eluding me right now. crap, can't think of his name. But anyway, he was never in Black Sabbath. He just played drums. So it's like my timeline page is a list of all the lineup changes, like all the guys, even the guys that played like one gig.
Mm-hmm.
July 1st, 1997. Shannon Larkin from Ugly Kid Joe played drums with Black Sabbath
Oh,
for
wow.
one show, but it counts because it happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's some really completist history there. So, I mean, it's...
That was always my goal, to tell the complete story.
Mm-hmm.
And my personal goal, and I couldn't achieve it because some of the lineups are like demo only level, and you can't get photos of that. What the one lineup that really bugged me that we didn't get to hear properly was the original incarnation of the Dehumanizer lineup without Vinny Appice, when Cozy Powell was still there. Cozy Powell and Geezer Butler as a rhythm section, that would have been fabulous. And
Wow.
and they worked on it for a while, and then they had the horse accident, which initially I thought was a made up bullshit thing, but then I talked to Cozy and no, that was real. But anyway, they worked together, and then of course it didn't work out. When I worked for Cozy Powell, one of the things I wanted from him is I said, dude, do you have any stuff from that? Not so much recordings, because those leaked out anyway. We got all those recordings, but pictures. And he goes, yeah, I got some of that stuff in the archives. And like a week and a half later, he died. And he was gonna get me that stuff. In fact, most of the Dehumanizer demos that are out there came from his then girlfriend, who sold off his crap.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's why we got supposedly the Born Again demos leaked out from an ex-wife, and that kind of stuff. So it's like, oh, yeah.
That's heartbreaking.
But no, the end of that, the reason I went down that path is I try and get pictures of all the lineup changes where I can, whether it's an official promo picture, on the odd chance I've taken the picture myself, which is rare, but there's a few of them in there, or other fan stuff. I try and get something of everything, and that combination I can't. And it's like, God, Cozy died, and I'm not like pissed at Cozy for dying or anything, but it's like once he died, his stuff went scattered to the winds, and trying to get Geezer or Tony to part with that will be a miracle, assuming they even have it. So it would have been from Cozy's personal collection, so I don't know if Geezer and Tony would even have that.
So what's your, going back to some other Deep Purple connections, what's your feelings on the other two singers, Gillen and Hughes' contributions to the Black Sabbath catalog?
I loved Born Again. I freaking loved that album. It was, when I got into Sabbath, as I told you, it was Mob Rules.
Mm-hmm.
Born Again was the first new studio album, because there was also Live Evil in between, but it was the first new studio album that came out, and I digested the crap out of that.
Oh, yeah.
The cover art is awful, but the album is, and there's all the
yeah.
stories about Ian Gillan and the mix and the, and all that, but I love the album as it is.
Really?
And I love the album as it is. It was my first new Black Sabbath album. I mean, technically Mob Rules was new at the time, but I didn't sit and wait for it to come out. It was already there.
Right.
And again, Hit Parader and, whatnot. And I still remember to this day reading these magazines, Geezer talking about working on some song for the Born Again album called Death Warmed Up. And I asked him years and years, even decades later, I said, dude, was that a real title? And he goes, it was probably a working title for something, but I don't know what it was for. But because it's weird. Yeah, I'm going to sidetrack it. Keep me on focus. Ian Gillan, that was my first Black Sabbath tour, was the Born Again tour.
And how was that tour?
Well, I had nothing to compare it to at the time. So I mean, all the talk about Ian reading the lyrics off the floor, and it's like, yeah, but Ozzy read them off the teleprompter too. So,
Yeah.
The funny joke about him and I guess my overriding memory of that was, well, twofold. One, Ian Gillan's bongos on stage for Black Sabbath was odd.
He brought them.
Yeah, that would be, of course.
The bongos were there. and Sabbath playing Smoke on the Water was quite bizarre. In fact, when he first started, I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like Sabbath, but it's because it wasn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a fabulous show. In fact, the individual show I saw it's a British band, so we'll say 5th of November, 1983. That was in Philadelphia. That was at the Spectrum where the Flyers and the 76ers played. It was across the street from Live Aid's JFK Stadium. But anyway, the significant thing about that gig, it was the first concert anywhere in the United States since that one concert in Cincinnati with the Who, where the kids got trampled to death. Everywhere banned what was then called festival seating, where basically there was nothing on the floor. It was just standing. And I got there, 7 hours before gates opened, and we were hanging outside, just, drinking beer and shooting shit and whatnot. They finally let us in, and I got all the way down there. I was all the way down there against the wall. You could not get any closer to the stage than I was, unless you worked there. But I then found out why they banned those kind of concerts, because everybody was pushing. And I was getting squished, and it was still an hour before Quiet Riot went on. So I was like, God, I'm not going to survive this gig. So I bailed out and just went back to the soundboard and watched from there. But the show was incredibly loud. They had this cross, which was above the drum riser. And it was massive. It was the brightest thing I've ever seen in my life. It was completely blinding when they put that on full blast. But it was a great show. I mean, there's so many people that will say, I don't like the Born Again album, doesn't sound like Black Sabbath. There was a lot of, deep Sabbath crap thrown around at the time, but I loved that show. It was my first. Yes, I loved it because it was my first, but I liked it because it was a great show. And now looking back in history, it's a unique thing. And I'm like, hey, that was my first one.
Oh, sure. And I have only heard kind of poor quality bootlegs of it, but even those bootlegs, you can hear that those performances must have been great. Gillen's voice sounds like it was at the top of his game, and everyone's playing was excellent.
The deluxe edition of the Born Again album, disc 2, is official live with Ian Gillan.
Okay.
Seek that out. It's not a bootleg. It's legit recorded live.
Yeah, I've heard of that, and I never. Yeah, I should really give that a shot.
There was also at the time, the show before Philadelphia was in. I can't remember the name. It was up in New Hampshire somewhere. I can't remember the name of the city right now, but it was recorded. They recorded it for. Back then, you guys listened to radio back then. They used to have this. What do they call it? This something radio network, where they always would play live concerts by bands over the radio, and it was professionally recorded. Well, Sabbath did that, and it was broadcast on the radio. Now, it wasn't a full set; it was only an hour, but it was official, and you could just record it right off the radio. Boop! All the bootlegs from that show, because they sound so much better than anything else, are because they were recorded off the radio from a pro recording thing. And it was great. I love that. I still have that somewhere. I can't think of what it's called right now, but I can look up my own tour history while we're talking. But Worcester, Massachusetts, I think.
Yeah, that's the one I think I've heard is the one from Worcester, because we both grew up right down the street from Worcester.
Well, it was professionally recorded by the band and broadcast on the radio, so the quality is damn good. But disc 2, here. Oh, you want a controversial opinion? My Tony Martin one. This one pisses off people more than the Tony Martin one. Ian Gillan did the best live version of the song Black Sabbath by any Black Sabbath singer.
Oh, wow. That is controversial.
Because his voice fit it better than Ozzy's. Ozzy's was nasal. His was the definitive studio version. Of course, it's the only studio version, but that was nothing wrong with the true original. But the live thing, I loved Ian Gillan's voice. I thought it fit the song better, and his laughing, Ian's laughing.
Yeah.
Oh, you need to find it or buy it, or I'll let you hear it later or something. But it's
I think I've heard it, but I can't recall. I'm gonna have to like queue it up after this and take a
and you need to
listen.
cue it up and actually pay attention to it. Now, don't put it
Right.
on in the background. You need to actually focus on it. That is great. And then that leads into Perfect Strangers, because, I mean, right after the tour was over, it was like the next day he was in the studio with Deep Purple practically. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah. It wasn't much of a gap.
no, because and when they released Perfect Strangers, I was going to be like, I want to hate this album. I really want to hate this album because it broke up the Born Again lineup. I was pissed off. I was
Yeah.
like, no, fuck that Deep Purple crap. That they're gone and done, right? Get that shit out of here. I want Born Again too. You know, it's like, and Sabbath took bloody forever to recover from that, and some say they never did. But yeah, I wanted to hate Perfect Strangers, but I couldn't because it's a brilliant album. To me, it is. This is not so much a controversial opinion, but most bands, well, no, that's not fair. Some bands have masterpiece albums, okay? And if you're lucky, like Pink Floyd, you get 2 with Dark Side in the Wall, okay? You rarely get 3. In my opinion, Purple has 3 masterpiece albums, okay? Machine Head, Perfect Strangers, and Perpendicular.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say in rock. You really threw a curveball there.
Yeah, Perpendicular.
See, we celebrate the your Tony Martin theory and your Perpendicular, throwing that in there. We love those oddball, unconventional favorites. It's because we tend to really gravitate towards Coverdale and Hughes era as being some of our favorite stuff. So we have kind of out there opinions as well.
Well,
which drives some of our listeners crazy, but
come taste the band. It's like, I'm not going to claim it's the best Deep Purple album at all. It isn't. I mean, it's not a crap album, but it's not a great album either. But the song Coming Home is one of my favorite Deep Purple songs of all time. It's like, that's a great track.
Oh, sure. Not going to disagree with that.
Yeah, I got to agree. Yeah.
So now
having said that, I mean, you go the other way. It's like, I love Chasing Shadows from album 3. It's like, most people don't know that track. You know, it's like, it's a great track.
Well, they got a lot of great stuff on that third, the self-titled album, I think.
We're huge Rod Evans fans, so we definitely feel like he got the sticky end of the lollipop, as it were.
Let me ask you this.
What's that?
I got a Rod Evans question for you. What the hell happened to him after Deep Purple 1980?
That's the question that everybody has.
Well, he went back to the medical field.
The last we heard about him is he's bald-headed and is married with some kids and happy. But
well, he got his royalties back at some point, didn't he?
We've never heard anything about that.
I think he basically his fines were so in the court action were so hefty that basically he
could never do anything. Like, I think that like anything that he got from the original Purple was just, he'd never see anything from it again. At least that's how the story goes.
Of course, then the other question becomes, what about those other dudes from Purple 1980? What are they doing?
Well, we've talked to one of them. We've interviewed.
Oh, really?
We've interviewed Tony Flynn, the guitar player, on our show. And
what episode is that?
Oh, I don't know. we did a
You don't have your own catalog memorized?
No. Far from it. It's probably in the 30s somewhere. Be 36.
I'll go find it. All joking aside, that kind of stuff intrigues me. It's like, I mean, I love to sit and talk about Dave Donato and Ron Keel and Joe Burt. You know, it's like the really rogue names in Sabbath history. And Purple doesn't have as many of those guys, though.
No, not as many. And when you talk about the new Deep Purple, as it was called, it's pretty fringe. And we did a special on it. It was right around the new year. It would have been back in January or so.
What are we talking about? The 1980 thing?
Yeah, we did a whole
we call it's the new Deep Purple, or it's sometimes known as the bogus Deep Purple,
the
but
fake Deep Purple. Or,
yeah,
I've always known it as the bogus purple, but
right.
my favorite story about that whole fiasco was the ads that proper Deep Purple would take out in the paper.
Yeah.
These are the people that will not be appearing.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, well, they had to do something.
I know.
Yeah, we tried to come at it with our special on that is from a kind of positive standpoint to kind of get ourselves in the heads of Rod Evans and those guys and see like what were they thinking. And there was obviously management pressure on them to put this together, and we tried to kind of see it from their side, not just because there's so much stuff online that you see about just people crapping on that whole thing for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
we tried to give a little bit more of a sympathetic take on what those individuals were thinking when they went through that from their perspective.
Well, yeah. Plus the fact that doing a special just like ragging on it wouldn't have given anybody a new perspective and really wouldn't have been that interesting. So we actually learned a lot.
Yeah, it was interesting.
See, for me personally, I care about. You talk about bands with. How are we on profanity on this podcast?
Oh, we're fine with it.
Yeah.
Bands with complete clusterfuck histories.
Mm-hmm.
The two worst that I can think of are Rat and Rat's complete legal history from beginning to now, including the Bobby Blotzer fiasco and I mean, Queensryche has some fun too, but not nearly as bad as Rat. But I love following legal lineage, which is why when Queensryche was fighting with themselves, you saw all the legal documents that came out for it, and you can still find them now. Reading that stuff is like brings you a whole litany of look at this crap I didn't know about,
Yeah.
But I follow legal lineage, and with Deep Purple, when it ended in 75, it was 75 when they finished, I think, wasn't it?
Their last album was 75 and they finished up in early 76.
Legally, though, you'll follow it and you go, who owned Deep Purple at that point? Right? I mean, I don't know. Did Blackmore resign his ownership when he quit? Because it's like, I mean, you mentioned Kiss again. When the original drummers,
Peter Criss, yeah.
He left, but then he continued to draw salary for the next 3 or 4 albums because while he wasn't in the active band, he was still part of Kiss, the ownership group. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you wonder, did Blackmore ever make any money off the Bolin album? I mean, what was the business relationship at that point? So it's like, that's what I care about, is following lineage like that. It's like, that's why I get so frustrated with fans that go, no, they didn't call it Heaven and Hell because Sharon Osbourne owned the name and they couldn't do it. It didn't work that way. Tony Iommi owned Black Sabbath 100%, lock, stock, and barrel from 1985 through that lawsuit about a decade ago when Ozzy sued Tony over merchandise or something like that. Mm-hmm. We don't know the resolution. It's locked by court order. I looked into it, but was unable to find anything. So it's locked. And the ownership status of Black Sabbath is the one subject that's gotten their management legitimately pissed off at me, saying, stop fucking asking about that. So I did. But I have a theory. Mm-hmm. You know what happened with Pink Floyd in 85 when Roger Waters quit?
Yeah, speaking of messes.
Okay. He quit the band, and the resolution of Waters tried to sue them to stop. Says, you shouldn't have quit then, you dumbass. If you wanted to stop them, you should have stayed in the band. But anyway, if you look at anything new Pink Floyd has released from 87 forward, which would be Momentary Lapse of Reason, Delicate Sound of Thunder, the 94 album Division Bell, Pulse, any new compilation that has come out since then, if you look at the copyright all the way at the bottom, it says Pink Floyd 1987 Limited. Okay. Mm-hmm. Anything prior to that, which would be the final cut and all the way back to Piper at the Gates of Dawn, they all say Pink Floyd Music Limited. There are 2 legal Pink Floyds, one for all the old crap and one for 87 and forward. If you look at Black Sabbath albums now there hasn't been much, admittedly. There was 13, the End EP, that EP with the extra tracks. live album. And a Blu-ray release, and live in Birmingham for the last show. There's been like 5 releases since 13, if you count compilations, live albums, and box sets and crap like that. All of them, I don't have it in front of me, and I don't think you want to see me stand up and go find it. But there's a copyright on the bottom of them. It says Black Sabbath, something, something, something. I don't remember exactly what it says right now. But what I'm getting at is, I think this is now, if any Sabbath management hears me blabbing about this is personal theory based on what I can see on my own. I don't know any.
They're gonna hunt you down.
My theory is there are 2 legal Black Sabbaths. There is one that controls the Ozzy Osbourne era material, and one for everything else. My gut feeling on the resolution of the lawsuit is because Ozzy sued Tony over the fact that you were making money off my image, my work, blah, 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 and I wasn't getting anything of it, because the original resolution of the band ownership was solved in 85 when Tony bought everybody out and he owned it 100%. So it was all Tony from 85 till this lawsuit. What I think happened is there's 2 legal Black Sabbath creations. There's one that covers all the other crap, and one that covers Dio, Tony Martin, Ray Gillen, Tony, everything else. And that other one is 100% Tony, and the other one is 50-50 Tony Geezer, or not Geezer, Tony Ozzy.
Really?
Or Shazzy. But
Shazzy.
but that's my personal theory, that there's 2 legal Black Sabbaths. I think it's the same things, and I like following lineages, swinging it back to Deep Purple. The people who put together bogus Deep Purple in 1980, they had to know they didn't own the name to it.
Oh, of course. And
they had to know they didn't have the legal right to do it. So what the fuck were they thinking? That is the person I want to talk to. The guy who put it together, who was the genesis, the idea of Purple, because it wasn't the band members, as far as I know the story. It's that person. I want to talk to what the fuck were you thinking? How did you really think you could get away with that?
Yeah, we touched a little bit on it in the special. Like Greenberg was his name or something, but like that, as far as I know, that guy's vanished into obscurity. But I think he felt like, well, I've got Rod Evans here. That's my legal, and Rod Evans had a, something of a. I mean, he didn't really have any legal ground, but he had something of a ground to stand on to say, I'm the original singer for Deep Purple. And had they build it differently or said, hey, Rod Evans doing the songs of Deep Purple or whatever it is, I'm sure they could have gotten away with it. But it's the fact that management seemed to have been trying to pass them off as Deep Purple that really, and a lot of people, fans, were understandably upset because they thought they were going to see whoever, hence the ads you talked about saying these people won't be performing.
Well, Dave Evans does that. The original AC/DC singer, he does. Now, he doesn't pretend to be AC/DC, but he does play a lot of, I mean, his time in the band was really early, and there's not a lot of stuff that's true Dave Evans AC/DC material, but he'll play Heaven and Hell, Highway to Hell, Back in Black. He'll play the other crap, and he's like, I'm the original AC/DC singer, but he never pretends to be AC/DC, which I think it's what you're saying. If Evans had done that, it probably would have worked.
Well, and Evans is quoted in one of the shows as saying, "This song is off of our Burn album. It's called Might Just Take Your Life."
Yep.
It's like, okay, that's a bit of a stretch there, Rod. Like
I've seen that video.
Yeah, so I think that we found that didn't we I don't know if it was an assumption, Nate, or if we had said that at that time, I think that whatever the management company was that tried to put it together, we're just like, well, nobody's really used or done anything with the Deep Purple name, and we have the original singer, so let's just throw it out there and see what happens. And
they were just kind of like,
what happened.
Somebody parked this, this beautiful sports car on the street, and they haven't used it for years. Like, why shouldn't I be able to just take it out for a spin?
But then that speaks to the other thing. When Proper Purple started again for the Perfect Strangers album, you have to assume what was left legally of Deep Purple in 76. You go, all right, what's the new business agreement? It's like, how does that break down? It's like, who is technically in Deep Purple, as a legal entity? But
at the time, wasn't
That's the kind of incredibly fiddly crap that I care about.
Well, I think that in that case, I know that when they were talking about the lawsuit, wasn't it at least they quoted Ian Pace and John Lord during the Rod Evans
I think
case
Pace,
against
Lord,
him?
and I think Blackmore a little bit too.
Yeah, so that makes me think that, because I mean, just knowing or just the legend of Ritchie or whatever, it would seem to make sense that he just threw his guitar on the floor and was like, "I'm out of here," and just decided to quit the band and give up all legal rights to it. But that probably didn't happen. But you
No, it
figure,
didn't.
you know, he's the type of guy that would do that. But I think that it was Blackmore, Pace, and Lord in 1980. Probably, like, my best guess would be those three guys still.
And they were all, I mean,
on the name.
the company of Deep Purple never ceased to exist, and there were still business
Right.
matters that tied them all together. And it was one of those things like, we can't let this band go masquerading as Deep Purple and lessening the brand or the cheapening the value of what we created in the past.
Mhm.
That's not going to help us. So that's why they had to kind of cut it short.
Now, all of this came from you asking me about my opinions about the Ian Gillen and Glenn Hughes. We never even got to Glenn Hughes.
We never even got, well, we got to talk about Glenn Hughes. What,
Yeah, so let's get to Hughesy.
Obviously a short-lived era, much like Gillen.
The thing with Glenn Hughes was I saw them on the 7 Star Tour.
Mhm.
And when I saw them, I thought I was seeing Glenn Hughes. I didn't find out until later that I saw Ray Gillen instead.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Because while they did announce themselves, I was either not paying attention at that moment, and I didn't do drugs or anything like that, so I wasn't out of my mind. So it wasn't like that. But I really thought I saw Glenn Hughes. So I was like, this guy's not so bad. I don't see what the big problem is. I'm like, oh, it's because it was Ray Gillen. But yeah, I didn't see Hughes. A buddy of mine saw Hughes in Detroit on the 7 Star Tour.
Yeah, one of our T-Bone, who's part of our podcast network, he happened to see the last show, I guess, with Glenn Hughes. He posted it on Twitter the other day. Like, he didn't realize it at the time, but he ended up, because he was from Detroit as well, and he saw one of the last shows, if not the last show, with Hughes actually singing.
But yeah,
What was his
he saw it, and he said it was the Detroit show was pretty bad.
Yeah, he said it was pretty rough.
The bootleg of War Pigs. It's like, have you seen the Frankie Banali Quiet Riot movie When You're Here? Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen it.
You know, Quiet Riot's singer history post Kevin Dubrow is torturous at best. There's been 7 lineup changes, 7 singer changes since the death of Kevin Dubrow.
God, and how recently was that?
You really want
like
me to?
10 years ago.
Yeah,
I think,
it doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
Yeah, hang on. I got this hiding somewhere. But anyway, Glenn Hughes. Before I get completely off the track again, I loved the 7 Star album. I played the hell out of that, and but it's like, I mean, No Stranger to Love. It's not Black Sabbath, but I mean, it's still.
It's good.
Legally, it's not Black Sabbath either. Legally, it's Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi. But we all know that story. But I loved the album, and I thought it was great. And then later on, we got Dep Sessions, and we got Fused, which is a masterpiece. But 7 Star, I do not have a problem with it. Is it Black Sabbath light? Yeah, of course it is. It does not sound like hardly anything else. It sounds more like Glenn Hughes. But I love that album. And those dudes are way overdue for a 4th album.
Oh, yeah. That'd be great.
Glenn Hughes' last gig with Black Sabbath was 26th of March, 1986, in Worcester, Massachusetts at the Centrum.
Wow.
Oh. Always comes back to Worcester.
Yeah, I know, right?
The first one with Ray Gillen was 3 days later in New Haven, Connecticut.
There you go. Not far away at all.
I would have liked to have seen either one of those just for historical value. But There was another like unbelievable singer was Ray Gillen, who I would have loved to have seen him live, but
Well,
never did.
I did see him live, but I don't have any. I mean, I've seen bootlegs, not of my own show, but I've seen of some other ones.
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, he was great. I love his singing. His work on the first Badlands album, that's another masterpiece album. That's a
Absolutely.
fabulous album.
Yeah.
But then they changed their drummer, and the style changed for album 2. It was way more bluesier than hard rock on the second Badlands album. And the third one is kind of like, well, it's nice. It's kind of a half demo, kind of not completed thing. So
Still thought they were really good though. You didn't like them as much?
I didn't dislike them,
Yeah.
but the first one is so much better than the others that I can't tell you the last time I intentionally went to listen to Badlands 2 or 3. If I listen to
I think,
Badlands at all, it's
yeah.
first album.
Yeah, I definitely love the first album, but I think the second one, I don't know, the second one does it a little bit more for me, maybe because I like the bluesy stuff a little bit more.
So you probably
But
like Dio's Lock Up the Wolves then.
you know, honestly, it was the first new Dio album at the time for me. When I got into him, but it wasn't really my favorite. It's definitely the most kind of stripped down Dio.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there were like maybe 4 or 5 standout tracks on there, but as a whole album, it's not really one of my favorites.
It
But it's
wasn't
definitely
when
not
it
a
was
least
new
favorite.
for me, but as I've aged, I find I like that album better than I used to when it was new.
Me too. Yeah.
Well, speaking of
But
bluesy, what can you tell us about Coverdale almost joining Black Sabbath?
well, the same kind of story I can tell you about Robert Plant almost joining Black Sabbath.
I hadn't heard that one.
Um,
And then also wasn't
oh,
Michael Bolton also?
oh,
Michael
God,
Bolton.
who's the other guy? It's the one guy when I tell people that, they're like, you're fucking insane, but it almost happened.
It's not Michael Bolton.
Michael Bolton. Yep.
Yeah.
Michael Bolton. It's like, the problem is people know Bolton for his sappy,
Right.
stuff now, but if you look at his early crap, not claiming it's like Pantera level of rock.
Wasn't
but,
it that band like Was it Blackjack? Is that was his name?
Blackjack with Bruce Kulick. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, Bruce Kulick was in Blackjack. Oh, no kidding.
Yep. Yep. Bruce played with them in the early days, so he was more hard rock. And I mean, even though you said that he is more known for, his ballads and his mainstream stuff, he still has a powerful voice. Like I could picture it. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it would have been really interesting to hear him play in a band as heavy as Sabbath.
Well, that's like people like, I think of like female artists, some of the current ones now, like Lady Gaga and Mariah Carey and people like this. The music choices they make are fucking atrociously awful, but they can sing.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, I would love to hear one of them attempt metal for real, just to see what it would be like.
I've heard Lady Gaga. She was in a Zeppelin tribute.
She did that thing with
band.
Metallica.
Yeah, the closest was her and Metallica, which I thought was fantastic.
Yep.
Actually,
Oh, yeah,
I
I
really
never heard that.
enjoyed
Well,
that.
I just heard like an old video of her doing Zeppelin songs, like in a Zeppelin
Once
cover
James
band.
Hetfield's microphone came in. Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah. Despite that, though, it was really her performance was like, I mean, I remember watching that and going like, wow, she could do anything. She could go over to this style of heavy music and like dominate.
Yeah,
but
and
why bother?
But doesn't yeah, exactly. Why bother?
She's having no problem paying the bills.
Well, she's got Lady Gaga money. She could do whatever she wants. She could be a Black Sabbath mark, whatever.
Well, she could release a hard rock album and it would sell 1 million copies.
Yeah.
The last you mentioned that's funny, and go to the bottom of my timeline page. I stopped calling it Mach 1, Mach 3 because it got ridiculous.
Yeah.
The last lineup on my lineup page, it's 38A. And the A means it's a repeat, because it's like when it's like you look at it, you go, all right, Mach 1 of Sabbath, right? Not counting their proto days when they had a 6-piece band, but proper Mach 1 Black Sabbath. It's like, okay, they leave and it's Dave Walker. Dave Walker's Mach 2. Okay, Ozzy comes back. That's not a new lineup. It's
Right.
the old lineup. I'm not going to say Mach 1 again. It's a lineup change. So I call it 1A because
There you
it's
go.
a
Got it.
repeat. And
Okay.
then after that was Dio, Iommi, Butler, and Ward, which is 3. It's like 4. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's Dio, Iommi, Butler, and Ward was 3. 4 is Dio, Iommi, Nichols, and Ward. 5 is Dio, Iommi, Gruber, and Ward. Then Dio, Iommi, Butler, and Ward back again. So it's like,
Butler is always like a boomerang. He's always coming back. We
well,
got one other, not really Deep Purple related, but an interesting one for me is tangentially related. So Ian Gillan obviously was the original Jesus and Jesus Christ Superstar, and
I know where you're going.
so he leaves, and then
He died too.
who takes, yeah, sadly, so he leaves, and Ian Gillan is unable to perform on Broadway. So who performs as Jesus on Broadway but Jeff Fenholt?
Oh, Jeff Fenholt. Yeah, Mr. Not officially in Black Sabbath.
Mr. Not officially in Black Sabbath, but kind of like there's some sort of question there. But he is actually on, I have it behind me somewhere, but Jeff Fenholt is on the original Broadway cast version record of Jesus Christ Superstar. What's the story with him? How did he come about?
Well, I don't know how they hooked up with him originally, but it's like I've said this on my site. Depending on who you talk to, you get a different story.
Mm-hmm.
When he was alive, in fact, all right, hang on, I'm getting ahead of myself. When he was alive, Fenholt would tell people that he was in Black Sabbath for 6 months and recorded Seventh Star and ended up being dumped and replaced with Glenn Hughes, and that he's, uncredited for the work he did on the album, blah, blah, blah. Iommi's side of the camp says he just tried out, he was shit, and we didn't use him.
Slightly different.
Those two stories are so diametrically different that I don't know who's telling the truth, okay?
Yeah.
In the absence of hard facts, I have to go with what seems reasonable to me, which is Iommi's story. Having said that, I published all this crap on my, I say crap, that doesn't mean the story's crap. It's just, I published all this on a page. He's not on my timeline page because I don't officially consider him a member.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a bio page for Fenholt on my site where I list all of this stuff. Somebody sent Fenholt my page, and he wrote me, and there's a whole conversation that I got permission to put on my site, an email exchange between Fenholt and myself talking about, dude, what the hell,
He's like, how are you looking past the Fenholt era of Black Sabbath? How dare you?
It's not quite like that, but I mean, I'll send you the link when we're done.
I'll have to check this out.
It's I don't know how to describe that beyond what I've already said. And it's like, I mean, there are demos with Fenholt out there, and they're not really that good.
Mm-hmm.
It is Seventh Star material with Fenholt on it. From what I've been told, the way it went down was they had the songs in proto version, and they tried out Fenholt by having them wing lyrics, because that's what Ozzy used to do in the early days. To sing vocal lines, he would just sing any old shit, but
Sure.
He sung it in the way they wanted the song to go, which is why that cover of Blue Suede Shoes has such incorrect lyrics, because it was never intended to be released. It was just a thing they were farting around with during a sound check. But yeah, I mean, Fenholt did that. They said, here's some songs, and make something up on the fly. And you can hear it in the demos, and it's not that great. So my opinion is probably leans more towards the Iommi side than Fenholt's 6-month claim, but the dude's dead now. So it's like, it's like he can't fight it himself, and there's no point in trashing him. So it's like, I almost don't care anymore.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course, if you're thinking back to years ago, like something that you think like, oh yeah, me and my friend used to do this all the time, and we'd sick months and months and months. It was probably happened 3 times.
Well,
Maybe it lasted 3 weeks. Who knows?
that happened with Craig Gruber. Craig Gruber has made some wild claims about Black Sabbath over the years. Now again, he's gone, and we had a very difficult conversation about all this stuff. But what I'm about to say, I did not make up. It's in interviews all over the place. You can find it easily on your own if you look for it.
Mm-hmm.
He made the claims that the song Die Young from the Heaven and Hell album was something that he brought to Black Sabbath from an unused Rainbow track. He's also claimed that the final release version of Heaven and Hell is his bass and not Geezer Butler's. What else did he claim? There was something else about that. He claimed that he was there and had uncredited co-write material for like virtually everything on the album. He had some really wild claims, and because of the wild claims, people would tend to trash him for that. And this is not me. I'm talking in general. Whenever his name came up in connection with Black Sabbath, which admittedly wasn't much, but when it did, these claims would resurface. And of course, Sabbath fans would generally take a crap on that. Well, this happened on my own site has forums as well, and it happened there too. Gruber saw that and basically sent me a nasty gram and said, you will take this down. You will blah, blah, blah. He was pissed to the point where I actually had to consult legal action to defend myself.
Yikes.
It didn't come to that. The thing is, I offered the dude an olive branch. I said, now this one I'm about to say, I've said to everyone, I have never in all the years I've run the site ever claimed to be the definitive source for anything. I know a lot. I've seen a lot. I remember a lot, but in no way do I claim my word is gospel. Okay. I said, if you find something that I have done or said that is wrong, tell me and we'll fix it. Okay. And I told that to him too. I said, look, tell me what's wrong and we'll fix it. And he goes, no, fuck that. Take it off. His only response was delete it. Right.
Yeah.
Which meant that I would have to delete part of my timeline and anything that referenced him. In long story short, in the end, I talked him into, I will give you a platform. Tell me what you want to say, and I will present it unedited in any way, except maybe to fix typos or something. But I said, I will do whatever you want. And he still didn't bite on that. He still was going to sue me. And I'm like, dude, really? In the end, he came down from that, and we ended up going with, I reworked my timeline to mention him and Nichols and it's just, let's put it this way. If you go to my timeline page now and read the stuff on Gruber, that is what was the end result of Gruber threatening me.
Jeez. It's funny, like you've got some guys who can come up with some, sort of outlandish claims like that seem to be easy. It reminds me, have you ever heard of like Bernard Purdie's claims about the Beatles? Bernard Purdie's legendary drummer, such an amazing drummer, but you see interviews with him like, wow, he's out there, and he claims that he played drums on like basically all of the Beatles recordings. And it's like, I know Paul McCartney definitely replaced Ringo on a few tracks, but it's some pretty outlandish claims that he's made. And it's just funny that this is somebody, Craig Gruber as well. Craig Gruber's probably not quite as renowned as Bernard Purdie, but Purdie's somebody who's got this legendary career in his own right. It's funny that he would make this claim that he played on all these Beatles recordings as well. And it seems like things that would be very, it's very, very hard to prove right, but it's also hard to, like, how do you prove him wrong other than the fact that there's plenty of witnesses who say he didn't.
But the biggest outlandish claim was that it was him on the album and not Geezer. It's like, come on, dude, really? Seriously?
It'd be great if he started claiming he was on, like, I was on I played all the bass on Paranoid. You didn't know that?
But I mean, I don't want to seem to be trashing the guy, but I do have a bit of a sensitive spot to him because he threatened me legally. So I'm like, really?
Mm.
And it's like, I hate talking ill of the dead guy, but it's like, dude, you were a real jackass when you weren't dead.
I mean, that is a weird thing to threaten legal action on too. It's just like, what do you? That doesn't make any sense.
I did nuke all the public conversation about him because it's not worth the hassle to try and fight to leave it there. I'm like, that's fine, but it's like, really, it's like, but again, having said that, Craig Gruber did work on the Heaven and Hell album. It's not like he's like some dude off the street who was like claiming to do this. He was there. He worked on the album when Geezer left, and then came back right at the end. And see, that's a weird thing that I mentioned way earlier, that the Heaven and Hell demos with Ozzy. You know that legendary story that Dio talks about all the time about, I met them the first night and they played Children of the Sea, and I went away and wrote lyrics and came back and we wrote that song that first night. That's a legendary story. It's been told a billion times. What most people don't think about that is Sabbath had to have the song created to play that first night. They didn't invent Children of the Sea in one night. The one night part was Ronnie's lyrics, but the song existed. So I want to hear how much of that existed when they were still working with Ozzy. And if that's the case, what else existed when they were working with Ozzy? So how many of these tracks had Geezer's bass that Craig Gruber played on that then got re-replaced by Geezer Butler in the final version? It's like, that's the kind of crap in it. And I tried asking Tony that once, and he goes, man, I don't remember that shit. So
of course he wouldn't.
Yeah, they never do.
Ralph's manager, I asked him once a question like that, and he goes, you probably have a better chance of researching the correct answer than Tony does of remembering it.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be the we're not by any means super prolific in our interviews, but we've interviewed enough people that have been involved with the music at this point to know that, yeah, they're generally like, for them it was like just like a day at work. Like they go to work and
well, that's like me at the video game company. People say it must, I mean, yeah, it's fun, but it's like, it becomes a point where it's like, okay, we have meetings over, okay, the guy's arm is going to be, his shirt is going to be red versus blue. And then you have to have meetings. Well, why do you want it to be red? Why does it have to be that color? It's like the amount of detail is ridiculous. But but where are we? Where are we going back to connections? We did Glenn Hughes.
I think we've hit a lot of the main ones. I think in wrapping up, I guess kind of the main thing I'd want to talk about is kind of this continued relationship between Gillen and Iommi that seems to last pretty well to this day. They did Who Cares? That's probably going on 10 years ago at this point. What do you make of that
single and then the album and then the Armenia music thing, which was cool. Gillen also turned up a couple of times over the years. He turned up on the Headless Cross tour as an encore, and they did Smoke on the Water with Ian Gillan and Tony Martin together.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen a picture from that.
And Tony Martin just recently, his then wife had taken a picture. Tony Martin on his Facebook page within the last couple of months posted a picture from that gig with him and Ian Gillan on stage. And of course, Tony and Neil Murray.
Yep.
And it happened one other time. It's one show on the Tier tour, I believe it happened as well. Same concept. It's just he just came out for an encore. I think that one might have been Paranoid, but I'm not sure. But yeah, he did. Tony, those guys are good friends. It's like him and like Brian May. It's like this. I mean, Tony and Brian May are big friends.
Yeah, and Brian May did stuff on Who Cares as well, right?
You mean the Who Cares?
Or was it just
the Who Cares band was it was Tony, it was Ian Gillan, it was Nico McBrain from Iron Maiden, was Jason Newsted from Metallica, and some guy if I remember correctly, he was the guitarist in Tony's daughter's band at the time. I can't remember his name.
Oh, okay.
Tony Marie Iommi's Lunar Mile was the name of that band. Tony's daughter's band was named Lunar Mile. And if I remember correctly, that other guitarist on that was his daughter's guitarist. I think I'd have to look it up to be sure, but that sounds right.
It's good to see the two of them always kind of seem to be popping up together, and well, at least up until last year when people could still get together, and seeing them kind of hanging out. And
now everything is this Zoom stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Tony and Ian are doing this. All right. Well,
was there something else we were going to talk about? Did we hit all our? Did we?
Oh, yeah. Before we go, I wanted to talk about your experience seeing Deep Purple in Texas.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, my as I told you, I got into Purple and when they were inactive. I got into Purple in 1980. I could be a smartass and say it was because of bogus Deep Purple I got into Deep Purple. But no, that was when that compilation came out. Although it would be interesting to go back and find true release date for that Deepest Purple compilation, see if it came out while bogus Purple was active. That would be amusing if it was. But anyway, that was my on-ramp. So, and I cannot tell you why I did not go see any of those tours. Perfect Strangers, Blue Light, the Deep Rainbow album, but I technically saw a show on the Battle Rages On tour. Mm-hmm. The only United States gig on the Battle Rages On tour was the third gig with Steve Morse. It was in Corpus Christi, Texas, in a place called Johnnyland. It was, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like somebody's backyard kind of thing. It's like you drive cars into it was like the old drive-ins when you used to drive in and park on grass. It was kind of like that. Now, there weren't cars there, but it was just basically a grass field with a stage in one corner. And it was a small-time thing. And given what they were doing with Steve Morse at that point, it was basically those three gigs. There were two in Mexico and one in Texas. It was their tryout with Morse, as I understand the history of it. I was not aware of it at the time, but looking back, I found out that was the case. But yeah, that was my first ever Deep Purple gig. And based on what had happened with them at that point, with Ritchie walking out and the Joe Satriani thing, which I wanted to see Satriani. I really did. I really wanted to see Satriani with Purple, and I didn't. But that's because I didn't get the choice. He didn't play here. But I saw that gig, and it was fabulous. The set list was what was the thing? There was something that they played that really surprised me in the set list. Corpus Christi, there it is. Set list. Highway Star, Ramshackle Man, Maybe I'm a Leo, Fireball, Perfect Strangers, Pictures of Home. Of course, you gotta have a keyboard solo. Knocking at Your Back Door, Anyone's Daughter, Child in Time, Anya, Battle Rages On, When a Blind Man Cries. That was it. That's the one that surprised me.
Anyone's Daughter is a kind of a surprise too.
Yeah, that's a deep cut.
Anya, Battle Rages On, Blind Man Cries, Lazy, Space Truck, and Woman from Tokyo, Painted Black, Speed King, and Smoke. But
pretty good set list.
That was now you guys would know better than me, but if I'm not mistaken, when he came back for the abandoned, that's not it. It was the Perpendicular was next. Had Ian cut his hair for Perpendicular? He used to have the really long hair on tours.
That's a good. I think he had cut it shorter. I don't know if it was like the shortness level that it is now, but
because because when I saw him with Sabbath, he still had the really long hair. I mean, if you're listening to the audio podcast, you can't see anything, but I'm making hair gestures with my hands. But he still had the really long hair that he had when I saw him in Sabbath a couple of years prior. Well, I don't know, years at that point, but
I
But
think
they
he would
still
have
did
still
the
in the
thing
Battle
with,
Rages on tour. He still would have had the longish hair, wearing that flower vest, that floral print
Yeah,
vest.
yeah, he
yeah,
did.
Um,
He
and
did
then
when
yeah,
it was all the post Blackmore versions. I think that's when they started to kind of their look started to shift a little bit. If they had a look, you know.
he still had the long hair, and they did that thing they cut all the lights and did nothing but a strobe light from behind him, and he would swing his hair like, you know,
yeah.
yeah, it was a cool video effect. It was during it was Perfect Strangers they did
Yep.
it for. It was cool. But yeah, that was a great show. And my friend who's a big Purple nut went nuts over the set list. I mean, I didn't appreciate it until later, but at the time I was like, I don't know these songs. What is this? You know?
That's a really good set list. Wow. Well,
But yeah, then to go forward, I didn't see him again until the tour they did in '02 with the Scorpions and Dio. And I saw that, and they did that show, and they played for another controversial opinion. My single all-time favorite Deep Purple track across all eras. We did worst. What's best? Can you put it to one?
oh man.
It's,
Well,
it'll
given your
change from day to day probably, but
yes,
for me,
given your breakfast in bed out of left field there, I don't know where you're gonna go with this. Is it off of Perpendicular?
Nope, but I can guarantee you. The only hint I'll give you, it's a Morse era track.
Okay.
I guarantee you it will piss off some of your listeners. My single
Good.
all-time favorite Deep Purple track, bar none, and it's an instrumental.
Oh.
The well-dressed guitar.
Okay. Wow. That is unexpected.
I saw them do that on this '02 tour with I told you about, and Ian came out and introduced it, and he goes, "This is something we've been working on. It's for the next album, Bananas, and it'll come out then. It's something Steve's been working on." And they played Well Dressed Guitar, and I'm not a big fan of new tracks live for the first time because it's like I don't know them, but of course it was an instrumental, so maybe that helped. But I loved it. It was amazing. So I was like, "Come on, Bananas, where are you? Bananas, come on, Banana." Fuck, it's not on there. And then I found out that's
Right.
because the space shuttle exploded,
That
and they wrote "Contact Lost," and it bumped "Well Dressed Guitar" from the Bananas album, and it
that
didn't.
explains why you've got Rapture of the Deep behind you there.
Yep. Well, actually, the reason I have this is because of the purple vinyl.
Oh, there you go.
nice.
It's purple vinyl. Because of my connections with the Sabbath site, I have quite a few record label friends, and I get a lot of stuff sent to me. And the dude who was working on this album sent me a copy of it, and I never got rid of it because of the purple vinyl. But yeah, Well Dressed Guitar, I absolutely adore that song. I totally love that track, and I don't know any other way to put it. I know it irritates a lot of Purple fans. I make that statement.
Well, that's great. The fact that your favorite track could have anything to do with Bananas was definitely going to piss off a lot of people. That's generally not held up there as a favorite by fans, but that's great.
Well,
we love those
it's not,
out there.
It's not really a Bananas track, but yeah, I get what you're saying. It's
sort of. It's related to Bananas.
Silver
Well,
Tongue, Pictures of Innocence, Doing It Tonight. I love those songs too.
Well, I think that even having a favorite Deep Purple track that's any later than 1972 will piss off a lot of Deep Purple fans.
Well, if you followed me on, well, you've seen my playlist things that I do on Twitter occasionally.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
My rule for my playlist is this: I have a playlist for every band that I like, every major band that I like. The rules are you have to have at least one song from every studio album in the band's catalog, even if you hate it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you have to find something, and that was a real challenge with the Motley Crue list because Generation Swine is a fucking atrocious album. There is really nothing on that deserves to be on any playlist. It's awful. But anyway, bands like Purple. Oh, the other rule is you can't just cheat and say just put all of Perfect Strangers on there. You can't do that. You have to limit it to a couple songs because they get gigantic. So it's like my Purple playlist for that. It's like I got 3 from Bananas. It's like Silver Tongue, Pictures of Innocence, Doing It Tonight. Then Girls Like That, Rapture the Deep, MTV. But I've got like quite a few from Now What because I love Now What. That's a great album.
Yeah, we haven't tackled any of their post 1976 breakup albums yet on the show. We're really kind of pushing that off. So we're looking.
Get me on here. I'll do it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to getting into some of those later albums, as there's lots of great stuff there. But we're really just meandering around the 70s mostly at this point.
No. You got to do all the stuff. Got to do the Tony Martin stuff. Come on, let's make it happen.
We will. We're just making everybody wait for it.
Well, now that you got me on there, I'll start nagging you on Twitter. Come on, where's?
Yeah, you won't be the only one.
But yeah, I mean, oh God, I basically I've been having fun talking. It's like I don't really want to stop. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
I know we encounter that every week, but we really want to thank you for stopping by the show. It's been a blast talking to you about. I mean, God, like you said, we could probably talk for 10 episodes. It's just about just scratching the surface, really, of all the.
Yeah, I know.
The links between Black Sabbath and Deep Purple, which are never ending,
and even beyond.
Oh, what you got there?
Forbidden
Vinyl.
Oh,
the Forbidden album.
Wow, that's nice. I always like that cover too.
Yeah.
But then it's like, then you go like Beatles, it's like.
I've heard of them.
So does that other drummer. Or you go, Pete Best. It's like, did you really screw up? No. Oh boy! But
well, Joe, thank you so much for stopping by the show. And where can our listeners check out your stuff? What's the best? Obviously, your site. But where are you most active with all your Black Sabbath related information?
Well, the site at black-sabbath.com, and Twitter is Sabbath fans. Twitter/Sabbath fans.
Yes, and you're very.
I mostly talk about Sabbath there, not completely though. I talk about other stuff occasionally, other music. In fact, I took crap for that some years ago. I listened to everything I owned in every band, all alphabetically, and I tweeted about it.
And people are like, come on, man, It's not about Sabbath.
Yeah, it happened all the time. And especially when you just seen some of the responses I got when I put up stuff like Paula Abdul. It's like,
I bet.
Hey, Paula Abdul is one of my first CDs, actually.
Well, I had a major crush on her back in the day. It's like,
how could you not? What was that? What was her CD? Was the one with Straight Up on it? It was one of my first purchases. I'm not ashamed to admit it.
Well, just like tonight's conversation has proved, is that a well-rounded kind of roundtable conversation is way more interesting than just staying on one topic or one band.
Exactly.
You said Paula Abdul was the first thing you ever bought?
Not the first, but probably for the one of the first 10 CDs I ever got. Yeah.
Oh, I do know the first album I ever bought, and it's quite embarrassing.
Oh, good. Lay it on us.
Captain and Tennille, Love Will Keep Us Together.
There you go. Hey.
All right.
Are you ashamed of?
That ages me, of course, but it's like.
Yeah, I'm just going. I don't remember really so much with cassettes, but that was one of the first CDs anyway that I bought. So
the first CD I ever bought was "Born in the USA" by Bruce Springsteen.
Very respectable. I feel like nobody's gonna really give any trouble for that.
But the thing about that though is I bought it 2.5 years before I owned a CD player.
So it just sat there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't know if you remember in '85 how much more expensive CDs were than cassettes and vinyl. That they were a lot pricier.
Yeah.
When you would find a good sale on something, I jumped on it because I knew eventually I was going to end up on the format. And
you bought the nice price.
Exactly.
That's right. And they were the long boxes too, which I wish I saved them, but I don't have any long boxes.
I have a few long boxes in my parents' basement.
A nice price.
Nice price. Like that goes along with Be Kind Rewind.
Well, Nate will tell you, I clung on to cassettes till the bitter end. So
yeah, he had to have pride out of his cold dead hands.
Yeah.
They oh God, what was it?
I had no money.
Somebody just put something out on cassette. What was it? Shit.
A lot of bands are
somebody-
doing that now.
Yeah, some people are starting to release on cassette again, and I'm like, why?
Yeah, it's becoming trendy.
Yeah, I'm like, sorry, I can't go back to cassette.
They're trying to make it happen again.
I did go back to vinyl though. I bought a record player 2 months ago for the first time since '85. So
Oh, nice.
Yeah, vinyl I can see. Vinyl has some redeeming qualities to it. The colored vinyl, the inserts, the gatefold, like that's all cool stuff.
Yeah, but cassettes.
yeah, CDs. Born in the USA was the first CD I ever bought. The first CD I ever bought after I owned a CD player was The Eternal Idol by Black Sabbath.
All right,
there you go.
Solid.
Of course, it was new at the time. That came out in the States in December '87. My first CD player was a Christmas present from my mom that year.
Oh, 87. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I got mine like 88, 89, somewhere like that.
And it was gigantic, and all it did is play CD. It didn't do anything else.
Yeah, no features. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like the size of a computer.
Yeah, that was like my wife used to have one of the old Betamax tapes in the 70s, and the thing was gigantic. I used to call it a ka-chunk machine because when you eject it, that's the sound it made. Ka-chunk. You know.
Oh, I know everything was the size of like an oven. You know.
Yeah, my dad had the VCR that was like the two big pieces
old
that were
tech.
connected by a giant wire.
Yeah,
there's your old tech.
Oh yes, the Black Sabbath 8-track. All right,
great.
Joe. Thank you so
Beautiful.
much for stopping by.
Yeah, this was great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun. We can go another 2 hours if you want. So
Yeah, let's do it.
I think everybody else but us would lose interest. Maybe not.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the other thing I hate about podcasts. I hate about podcasts when you hear them say, "Oh, we're running out of time." Like, says who? You know,
I'm
it's
running.
like,
I'm about to run out of tape. I got to change the reels.
yeah. Well, you got one behind you. I can see it. So
Yeah.
Well, we do have. There is a file size limit, so every so often I do have to stop it and then start it back up. But other than that,
Yeah.
my hard disk is
speaking of
probably.
that, is there any purple? Is there any purple reel-to-reel albums?
Oh God,
Sabbath has a couple.
I'm sure there are, but I wouldn't know on that one. I don't even know how to operate this thing behind me.
My wife just texted me from the other room and said it wasn't a Betamax. It was a.
She's getting a sneak peek of the episode here.
It wasn't a Betamax. It was a first generation VCR. As I've been told, I have a loud voice, so.
I'm finding Deep Purple in rock reel to reel. Makes sense.
Nice.
Go buy it.
That would be cool.
All right. Well, Joe, thank you for stopping by the
Thank
Deep
you.
Purple podcast. We really appreciate it. And we'll have to talk again sometime about
Well,
Definitely.
all
No,
things
it's
Black
cool.
Sabbath
I'll
and Deep
be
Purple.
up for it. We come up with a cool idea. I'll be up for it. If you want me to guest on the Steve Morse stuff, I'll talk about it.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool.
All right. Thanks,
It
Joe.
was great talking to you.
All right, Mike. Take care.
All right.
right,
Have a
see
good
ya.
one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also give us a rating on iTunes to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.